Mike, and in this solo video, we are looking once again at I think what is probably the most disturbing series that, I talk about here, I tell you about on that chapter, and that is the scariest disappearances that are still a mystery to this day. I mean, some of these circumstances in which people just inexplicably vanish and are never seen again, some of these ones, maybe hopefully they won't always be mysteries, but they sure as SHITE are right now. Thank you so much for being here, big dog. Now, what say you? Let's give it a go. So with this video, I wanted to do it kind of iceberg style, with each disappearance being more creepy and mysterious than the one previous, though I might have messed that up, because the story of Logan Gentleman, it is as baffling as it is a hell of a lot of other strange adjectives. The biggest being WTF. I know that's not an adjective, but it will do. This story is so strange because there's a few witness accounts of Logan's last known movements, and they all seem to contradict each other. And this is from the witnesses. It involves a car swerving across a highway, multiple men being seen around it, a person booking it into the woods, and then another fellow walking down the road with no pants on. But mainly it involves a young man from Washington State, name of Logan. In 2016, Logan was 19 years of age, born and raised in Tumwater, Washington by his maternal grandmother, Ginny. Logan's mother had moved to Seattle shortly after he was born, leaving him with his grandmother, and Logan's father was from Saudi Arabia. Never even met the fella. Logan saw his mom from time to time, but it was really just Logan, his sister Chloe, Grandma Ginny, and Ginny's husband Bill. Growing up, young Logan was like the star of the show. And I actually mean that quite literally, because even today, if you go on his Facebook page, he's got so many videos. He was filming kind of like everything he did.
Okay, what are you guys doing? Hitting each other? Why are you guys racing, facing each other?
Camera on him and he goes,
You're recording.
no, I'm not. There's like
for real?
He was always getting up to all sorts, but all sorts was like of the football sort. He was smart, funny, charming. He was good at football. He was like the sort of guy when you're in school, you're thinking, this effing guy, you kind of hate him, but you also kind of can't help but like him because he's just such a nice guy. However, behind closed doors, things were not always easy for Logan, not that you'd ever know. Because he was biracial, he always struggled with his identity, and sometimes he had to leave friends over things they said to him. His mother left when he was 2 years old. His dad effed off to Arabia, never to be heard from again. He had abandonment issues, as you can imagine. But you know what? He was gonna build a bridge and make like a banana tree and leave. And he did. He graduated high school and left his hometown of Tumwater, Washington, never to return. For like a year. He did 1 year at Washington State, and then he came home. He did 1 year at Washington State, although did a year at Washington State is kind of misleading, because he was basically just partying and having a grand old time, and failed and flunked out of all of his classes, and basically the university said, don't bother kind of coming back for year two, because you'd even do the year two would just be year one again. So they said, take a year out. Maybe we'll take you in later on. And a lot of people, after they finish high school, taking a year out can be a good idea. And that was the plan for Logan. He returned home to Tumwater. He moved back in with Grandma Ginny and her husband Bill and began working minimum wage jobs, that sort of thing. Whatever needed doing, he done did. When he wasn't doing that, he was basically doing what a lot of young fellas do. Video games, beer, dare I say the devil's lettuce? I dare. And so, till the moment his life took a fairly disturbing and frankly frightening turn, he was more or less just a regular-ass young man. He drank, he smoked, but most people do it at that age. He wasn't getting into any sort of major trouble. He wasn't a troublemaker of any sort. It was on May 18th, 2016 that Logan walked into his grandmother's kitchen and, apprehensively, said he had something to tell his Grandma Ginny. That day was a Wednesday, and he told her that he would be gone for the following weekend. Why? He had an epiphany. He had one of them. So Ginny said, okay, you're going to be gone for the weekend. Well, please share us this beloved epiphany. And he said, well, it's kind of like one of those epiphanies. I can't really explain it. I guess it was one of them when you know type of epiphanies. I mean, he had identity issues due to being like from actually many different kind of backgrounds. His dad was Arabic, his mother was half black, half white. He's raised by his white grandmother. But even recently, after leaving high school, he had actually like cut off a lot of his friends because they'd said some mean, racist things to him. So he was having sort of issues about that, about where did he really belong, abandonment issues. Then again, same sort of dealio. So maybe he thought he had a bright spark about who he is as a person. Perhaps it was something like that. I mean, he came into Ginny like in the very wee hours of the morning before she herself was heading off to work. So Ginny was already thinking, this is kind of weird. Whatever this epiphany was, it must be important to him because he always slept in. And as a former young man myself, it is absolutely exhausting doing nothing. So Ginny said, okie dokie, let's talk about this later on. Out the door. She went off to work. She returned home then that evening at around 5:30 p.m. And Logan was nowhere to be found. Like nowhere at all. She was like, nothing to worry about though. He's probably off with friends doing something. However, it was the next day, Thursday. He was still nowhere to be found. Again, Ginny was not panicking. He's probably just, doing his thing. But she did check the, Find My iPhone on his phone so she could, just check. Where is he? He was actually in, the next town over, Olympia, which is where his mother actually lives. So again, she didn't think that was weird. Maybe he's gone to stay with her. He did kind of, from time to time, go and spend the night with his mom. So maybe he's there. Then it gets to the next day, Friday. Logan was not answering his phone. Ginny begins calling around. Anybody seen Logan? He was not with his mom. No one had seen him. However, there was still no need to panic yet. Hadn't he just said sure he was going away for the weekend on his epiphany business? Still though, Ginny and her husband Bill decided to drive over to where his phone had last pinged from to see if they could see his car. They couldn't see his car, actually. And now his phone was not pinging anymore. It was then Saturday night, and Ginny was now in full-on panic mode, having no idea where her grandson was. The last thing he'd said was that he had had an epiphany and would be gone for the weekend. What kind of epiphany did he have? Because epiphanies can probably be, bad. However, even though she had driven to Olympia trying to find his car, she hadn't found it. Others had found his car. And this is when the story of Logan Schendelman takes a disturbing turn. This whole video is about people who have never been found, all from different places, who all have vanished under very creepy and unnerving circumstances. But what if you wanted to vanish? Though ideally not under creepy circumstances. Did you know that your precise location can be tracked, and it is tracked by threats, censorship, and surveillance? That chapter to get a 2-year plan and 4 extra months. All with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you so much to NordVPN for supporting that chapter. Now let's get back to it. Though Ginny didn't know it yet, the day previous, the Friday, Logan's car had been involved in a very unusual incident on the freeway near Tumwater. It was around 3 p.m. and Logan's 1996 black Chrysler Sebring was driving among the packed traffic lanes when it suddenly began drifting. That's the word used by witnesses. Not swerving, drifting across 3 lanes of traffic. From the far right, slow lane, to the median, towards the fast lane. Other cars had to swerve around it, like it was almost causing this giant pileup on the road, but eventually it hit the median barrier and stopped. 3 people called this in to report it, but even those reports were strange. Some of those people who were calling in to report this car almost, killing someone. Some of those people were saying they didn't see anybody in the car, that the car was empty. Others were saying they did see somebody in it, but they were unconscious. Others were saying they saw somebody in it, but they were sitting in the passenger seat of the car. Whatever the case, it didn't seem like anybody was actually driving the car. It seems from reports that the car had been on the road driving previously and driving very erratically before it pulled off the freeway, parked on the hard shoulder. Then either the car was just left in drive and it just rolled across the freeway, or they had just left the car in neutral, so it just slowly rolled off the hard shoulder, crossing then 3 lanes of traffic. It's very, very strange. It then hit the median, and some witnesses would say they had seen somebody exit the car and just book it into the woods. Grandma Ginny learned of this on the Monday, by which time the car had been impounded by the police. So who was in the car? Was it Logan? Had he run off into the woods? No one knows. Dogs were brought in and found nothing in the woods surrounding where the car had been. One of the witnesses said the person that ran into the woods was a white guy, so not Logan. In fact, many of the witnesses who did see someone that day near the car were shown photos of Logan, but they said it wasn't him. One woman said she'd been driving that stretch of road earlier that day and had seen the car along the side of the road and had seen Logan with 2 other men. No one knows the truth of these sightings. All of Logan's shit was also still in the car. His phone, his wallet, his ID. On the ground was like a bag, an empty like sandwich bag, and inside was a couple of like $15, $20 bills. But there was no signs of foul play in the car.
According to the Thurston County Sheriff's Office, Logan's grandmother reported him missing. He was last seen May 19th, 2016. The next day, deputies say a trooper found Logan's black convertible abandoned near south of Tumwater on southbound I-5.
It was sort of a strange circumstance. Witnesses saw the car pull over. A male subject jumped out of the car.
The car kept going and ended up in a median. The description of the man who jumped out doesn't match Logan's appearance.
His wallet, money, everything was identification, everything was left in the car.
Logan's family says they have no reason to believe he would run away, but they do believe someone knows what happened.
Some people who have refused to talk to law enforcement very adamantly, which is unfortunate because they may have information without realizing it.
Deputies say there's still no indication of where he is or a suspect in his disappearance.
Now, when Logan was actually reported missing, police began to follow up with his phone, pinging his last known locations. And it was very, very strange. In the days previous, after he had left Tumwater, and he had never seen his grandmother again, he had driven 100 miles south to Vancouver, Washington. Went down there, but for some reason just about-faced, and then drove the 100 miles back to Tumwater, and then his car was involved in this altercation. Why he had gone then there, nobody knows. The only link from Logan to Vancouver, Washington, was that he had been chatting with some girl, like online, that he'd met like on an online dating site, but she would say she hadn't seen him, though she would say she had received a text from him recently saying, "I hope I survive the week. Not great." Had he. Also weirdly, was that about 10 hours after the, car altercation on the road when it drifted across, 10 hours later on that same stretch of freeway at about like 1 a.m., a driver said they seen a man who would have matched, Logan's description walking along the side of the road wearing no pants. Where this man was spotted was near some houses frequented by drug users. If it was indeed Logan, had he got involved in some heavy shit and was just out of his mind. 1 week after he vanished, his Facebook checked into Olympia Regional Airport. Following up on that, though, it doesn't seem like he was there. Maybe his, account was hacked. Who knows? Technically, it's possible he left the country, maybe to someplace like Saudi Arabia or something to see his dad, but by all accounts, he was never interested in meeting with them, and police following up on this doesn't seem like he was there. And after all that, no one knows what became of Logan. He has never been found to this day. After the car crashed across the highway, the entire area was searched. After witnesses said they'd seen a guy run off into the woods, nothing of him was ever found. We don't know if that was Logan or not, but a lot of witness descriptions would say it wasn't Logan. So who was driving Logan's car and what became of him? Did it have to do with this epiphany he had before he went missing? We don't even know if he was in the car, period, that day.
County football star has been missing for more than a year. Detectives are continuing to search for him.
Yeah, 19-year-old Logan Schindelman disappeared on May 19th of 2016. His car was found shortly afterwards, drifting across the lanes down I-5 near milepost 92. Witnesses say they saw someone get out and run into the woods. Well, after getting a new...
Such a weird story, but maybe, who knows, but maybe... Because they said they saw a different guy come out of the car. Maybe he went to get drugs and he was going to go party with this girl, and then the drug dealers hijacked him, and then while he was on the highway, he tried to get away. Like maybe they were in the, let's say they were in the back seat, and they're like, "We'll shoot you. Go over here, go over there." So he does. Then he's on the highway, and then he swerved, and probably like he's ducking down to get so they can't shoot him. So then other passengers are like, "Oh, there's no driver," or he's in the passenger seat because maybe he was ducking. And then who knows what happens? He gets kicked out of the car. They steal his car. Then he's walking on the side of the road, and then they maybe come back for him and finish him off, or he was on a suicide mission, or very weird.
New tip from another possible witness. Today, deputies reignited the search in that same area, using canines to check the woods around the Farm Boy restaurant to see if there's any sign of Logan.
So what did happen to Logan? Most probably foul play, and someone ditched his car and ran off into the woods. The car was fingerprinted, but no usable prints were found. The car was pretty dirty. Had he been involved with drugs more than people knew and had met some shady folk? It's possible. Others have theories about his sister, Chloe, her boyfriend, Jacob. Allegedly, Jacob and Logan did not get on at all, and Jacob had a bit of a history, a violent history, so they, maybe he did something to Logan, but the police have interviewed him, they polygraphed him, they said he is clear. More than likely, Logan had some kind of mental break and just absolutely vanished. Maybe as part of this mental break, he encountered some unscrupulous characters who did something to him, stole his car, and then in some kind of incident, the car crashed and then they just ran away. It's an absolutely bizarre disappearance with no clues about what happened to Logan when his car ended up being involved in such a strange incident. The interesting thing is that his epiphany would lead you to believe he knew something was going to happen, though tragically, no one ever thought it would be this. Searches have been done for Logan over the years, but nothing has ever been found. Frankly, the word I would use to describe the Lost Boys of Pickering is haunting. Prepare to be haunted. Let's go back to the year 1995, March 17th of that year. Wasn't it only Paddy's Day? That was when Chad Smith, 18 years of age, and Jay Boyle, Jamie Lefevre, Michael Cummings, Robbie Rumbold, and Danny Higgins, all 17 years of age, vanished. All were from the region just north of Toronto, Canada. All from those little towns and cities along Lake Ontario. Not really like a whole lot is known about this case, but what we do know is that all 6 of those pretty close friends were out drinking, partying at a neighborhood party on, of course it was St. Patrick's Day. They were drinking, they were smoking, and late that night at around 12:40 a.m., the 6 of them all decided to just go for a wander, get some of that good old, cold ass lake air into your lungs. It'll make you feel better, it'll wash away all that booze. Maybe they just had a few too many Molsons. No moose heads allowed. Not again.
I don't know why I keep drinking this.
That wouldn't be the thing that would get washed away, though. Go for a casual stroll, however, they did not do. Now, all 6 of the boys were well experienced on the water. All had been out there many times, even stolen boats before. This wasn't their first rodeo doing something like this. What we do know, what is theorized, is that they attempted, and they successfully attempted, to break into nearby Frenchman's Bay, a marina there, and they were caught on CCTV doing so. They had done this before. A little trick they liked to play was to steal beer from boats parked up there. That was the last time they were ever seen. Residents nearby would say they heard a motorboat that night. And then, we really don't know. A few of the boys' girlfriends actually reported them missing that night, as they were supposed to meet up and continue partying. The first call to police was made at 3:30 a.m. I mean, this is a case where little is known. Only 3 of the boys were caught on CCTV. Where were the other 3? Not much is even known about the boys other than Jay, who had a criminal history, assault, and he was living with his girlfriend and baby daughter at the time. However, he was much loved by his family and was a popular fella. What is believed to have happened is that the 6 boys, even though only 3 of them were seen on camera, The 6 of them broke into the marina and stole 2 boats, one a paddle boat and the other a 13-foot Boston whaler. They then disappeared on the lake. Though they were reported missing, the police didn't actually bother to begin the search for 36 hours. The reason they were so slow to take a look into this was that some of the boys were well known to the police. So even though they were reported missing 2 hours after they were last seen, the police kind of just, brushed it off. They'll show up, you know yourself. Even when the parents called, the police were quick to still downplay anything, bad happening. Which of course makes all this the more tragic. But no sign of the boats or boys was ever found.
Good evening. Fear and anguish are gripping the families of 6 teenagers missing on Lake Ontario.
The teens disappeared after a Thursday night party. CFEO's Tom Hayes reports.
Family and friends held each other on the Pickering Beach today, desperately waiting word on the 6 teens that have disappeared.
The CCTV was soon discovered, so at least 3 of the boys were there, and 2 of the boats were also noticed to be missing. Everything from then on was assumed. We don't even know if the boys actually stole the boats that were missing, that were found later to be missing from the marina. The boats were just found to be missing, so people are assuming that the boys stole them and then went out into the lake. A search of Lake Ontario brought up absolutely nothing for these 6. It's a lot of people to go missing. A lot of people to have no trace of 6 people to ever be found is bizarre. I mean, you're likely thinking they went out there, they were drunk, they were high, they were whatever, and they ended up drowning on, in March, freezing Lake Ontario. But it's incredibly bizarre that no sign of those boys has ever been found. What's even bizarre is that the police have seemingly stonewalled any attempt for people to investigate, to look into this case. For example, the CCTV, that was shown to the family once. When later on, more family said, can we review the CCTV again? The police denied ever having any footage of the Marina Bay that night. Other cameras seemingly were not working that night, also located at Frenchman's Bay, the marina there. CCTV showed 3 of the boys close to the marina: Michael Cummings, Robbie Rumbold, and Jamie Lefevre. The other 3 are never seen. Perhaps they went to another marina, we don't know. But who is seen is 3 other mysterious people at the marina that night. People who have never been identified. The mystery people appeared 20 minutes on camera after the boys did. It appeared to be a man and 2 women. Now, they've never been found, and it seems like the police never made any attempt to find them, at least publicly, even though they could be the last people to ever see the boys. If they were involved with the breaking in, the stealing, were they at the party too, were they friends with the boys, they have never come forward about, what they could have seen that night. The only thing ever found was that a couple of months later, a gas can, a red gas can believed to belong to that missing Boston whaler, was found east of where they had been. It was found in New York State, across the entire lake. How it got there, we don't know. Why it was detached from the Boston whaler, we don't know. Thing was, there was only a quarter tank left in the Boston whaler, which wouldn't have taken them very far if they did indeed take it. But it would have been enough to head south, towards somewhere like Toronto. They also found a pair of red pants, much like Jay Boyle had been wearing a pair of red pants that night, the night he disappeared. However, DNA tests would reveal those red pants were not his. There were sightings of the boys over the years in Toronto, New York, but that's all they were, unconfirmed sightings. It's a weird case, made all the weirder by the authorities' lack of desire to investigate what happened. Now, in a case like this, most likely, the 6 boys went out on the lake and had an accident. Boat sank, boys drowned in the freezing water. But the interesting thing about that theory, and again, it's the most obvious theory, makes the most sense. But one of the boats stolen was a Boston whaler, deemed to be nigh on unsinkable. I know you've probably heard that before, but literally this boat is designed to be unsinkable. You can cut it in half, and they don't sink. It would have sank eventually, after being out on the water maybe for weeks or months at a time. But how was it not found, when the search was still ongoing? It was never found, never sighted. That's why a lot of people believe that there was foul play involved, possibly, in this case. But either way, it's a haunting disappearance out on the endless Lake Ontario. The water was also reportedly very calm and still that night too. It would have been difficult for the Boston whaler, an unsinkable ship, to sink in those conditions. Even though it can get extremely rough on that lake, that night and those days after, it wasn't at all. Where the gas can was found, well, the currents at that time should have taken it in the opposite direction, and the gas can would have only become separated from the boat intentionally. It's not like it would just fall off or something like that. So what if there was some kind of accident, a boat crash, a larger boat crashed into it in the middle of the night, didn't see it? Well, if that was the case, the boat somehow was ripped apart by some force, you'd expect there to be little bits floating across Lake Ontario. Literally nothing has ever been found. It's a weird story with a likely answer, but it leaves you with just enough questions to be haunted about the Lost Boys of Pickering. The night of August 1st, 1989, was a very strange and mysterious time, if you can believe that. And it was a very strange and mysterious time in Prince George, British Columbia. A family of 4, the Jack family. They all got into a strange man's car on the promise of work and were never seen again. The Jack family was made up of parents Ronald and Doreen, both 26 years of age, and their 2 kids, 9-year-old Russell and 4-year-old Ryan. They were all First Nations people. Little is known about the parents' upbringing, but from reports, Doreen's was pretty rough, full of mistreatment and abuse. The couple, Ronald and Doreen, met at 17 years of age, fell in love, they broke up, got back together. Russell wasn't Ronald's kid, but he treated him, just like he was. They had another, and they moved around a bit following the work. In the late 80s, they were in Prince George, BC, baby. Ronald had actually, unfortunately, just lost his job at the sawmill. And so they were in Prince George, they were on welfare, desperately trying to find income, to find, somewhere new to work. And as you can imagine, those kind of pressures, trying to provide for your family, it can put it is a lot of pressure to put on this young family. Doreen, she started drink a lot. She resorted to stealing medicine for her 2 young boys. Ronald was having no luck getting work, to the point where he started hitting Doreen, and allegedly he owed a lot of money to someone. And so this case becomes very, very... Actually, this is by far, I think, one of the creepiest cases, because it was on the evening of August 1st, 1989, that Ronald Jack, he headed to a nearby pub, a nearby bar. Few scoops. We all need them, right? And he was in that bar, he was drinking some beers, and as he sat at the bar, he ended up just striking conversation with one of the guys nearby, who seemed like salvation, pure salvation for Ronald and his family. Because it was at that bar he allegedly met a man who offered Ronald and his wife, Doreen, work. The thing they needed work. They needed money. He said he'd give Ronald and Doreen both jobs, and you know what? He'd even have daycare for their kids. He said he could take them to a logging camp near Kluklutz Lake, about a 45-minute drive due west of Prince George. Not far from Vanderhoof, where I've told you a few stories about. Also close to Highway 16, which you'll probably know better as the Highway of Tears, which I feel needs no introduction at this point. Name is a giveaway. But he said, you guys come with me. Ronald, you'll be logging. Doreen, you can be cooking. And, we even have daycare. Kids will be taken care of and all. As you can imagine, a desperate Ronald, hearing this, his eyes, his peepers just absolutely light up. When can I start? The stranger was described as a white guy, 6 feet and something tall, red hair, beard. Basically looking like a logger by how he was dressed. Baseball hat, checkered shirt. He said he would have work for them 10 days to 2 weeks. He could even drive them. I'll even take you to the logging camp myself, because the Jack family, they had no means of transportation. They didn't have a car. How about we go tonight? He said. The 2 men went back to the Jack's home, and Ronald even called his mom to let her know what was happening, and to look for him if he didn't return. The family were witnessed by relatives packing up and getting into this stranger's car, and off they went, never to be seen again. pretty terrifying. A desperate family taken away by who? For what? Why? Was there even did the logging camp even exist? Was he a serial killer? Because, judging from previous videos set in this area, there's a lot here. It was later that month, with no word from the Jack family, that Ronald's mom, Mabel, she reported them missing to the police. And they have never been found. Who they got into the car with, we may never know. Why he wanted the entire family why he said, oh, we have daycare, take the kids too. Why he wanted the kids is bizarre. Even locals would say, you know, when they were hearing about this, they would say the idea of a logging camp having daycare was mighty unusual. Now, some of my research says that when he met Ronald at the bar, he actually only said for Ronald and Doreen to come with him to the logging camp, that he just had worked for the parents and to, you know, leave the kids at home. Then when Ronald and the stranger went back to Jack's house, Ronald actually called his brother asking, hey, could you look, you know, take care of my kids for me for like 2 weeks while I go with this guy on this job? His brother said no for whatever reason. So then the stranger said, oh, hey, we have daycare so the kids can come too. It's all gravy. Ronald then said to his mom, they have daycare. I mean, maybe the stranger never even said daycare. Ronald just said it to his mom so she wouldn't be worrying that the kids were going with him. Who knows? But the fact that he did take the entire family is terrifying. And then they just got in this guy's car, went on the highway of tears, and were never seen again. I mean, usually when you have these stories of people disappearing on a road, getting into a stranger's car, it's unfortunately almost always a young woman, not an entire family of 4 people. Maybe the logging camp was real. Maybe it was an illegal logging camp, and maybe after something happened to them after they had been working there, or
it's a lot of logging camps, like logging roads, are unattended for months, and people drive down a logging road, they get lost, because back, I don't know when this was, but back in the day there was no GPS. You didn't know if this was a real road or a logging road, and a lot of logging roads just go on forever, and there's a lot of it branches out, and then it just doesn't go anywhere, and there's no gas stations, there's nothing, and a lot of people actually die that way. I've heard a bunch of stories of other families just going down the wrong road thinking it was a different road and running out of gas, and it was winter, and then they just froze to death in their car waiting for help, and no help ever came because it's a logging road and it's unattended for months and months. So maybe something like that happened. I don't know, it's weird.
ran away. Well, it doesn't seem like they ran away, because this was put out far and wide that they were missing, and you don't exactly go on the run with your kids. The most likely scenario is that this stranger was a serial killer who abducted an entire family of 4, which is incredibly terrifying. But maybe he didn't think that the Jack family would be missed. They were down on their luck. They needed work, so they were desperate people. And serial killers will always take advantage of desperate people, and maybe he just didn't think anybody would come looking for them. Which, sadly, he was right, being, unfortunately, First Nations peoples, they don't really oftentimes get the attention their disappearances deserve. I mean, it was reported on, but it was not nearly as big news as it should have been when a family of 4, 2 young kids go missing. Last seen with a strange man. The case was cold as soon as the family left that August night. No clues, no evidence. It would be 6.5 years before something actually happened, and that was in January of 1996, when an anonymous call was made to the RCMP located in Vanderhoof, near the lake the family were supposed to be going to, where the logging camp was. A caller told the police the Jack family are buried at the south end of some ranch by accounts. Who that caller was, though, no one knows. The call was traced to a house in particular, and at the time of the call, there had been, in fact, a house party going on at this house. But who made the call, the police couldn't determine. Since then, however, there have been no updates on this sadly under-investigated case of a missing family. There have been searches done over the years, most recently in 2019, but they haven't announced any findings, as there were none to announce. If it was a serial killer, the entire case is highly unusual. Taking advantage of a desperate person, sure, but two people, an entire family? Usually serial killers will go for, people they know they can overpower. Usually it's women, but this was just someone he randomly met at a bar. How could he have known anything about his potential victims, Ronald's wife and his kids? The logging job sounds very, very fake, but it's not surprising someone eager like Ronald believed it or wanted it to be true. Who knows what happened to the family when they got into his car that dark night? This is what the family would look like today. It's a really disturbing story of a likely serial killer, taking advantage of a desperate family, a family that vanished, and there's a lot of room out there in British Columbia for a lot of things to go horribly wrong, and unfortunately, much like all the other victims of the Highway of Tears, we will never know what happened to the Jack family. Thank you so much for watching, folks. You know what? At this point, it means a lot to me that you're here watching this old video. I hope you found it as disturbing as I did. Researching these tales. The next old video will be up, when it's up, so please check it out. And as always, check out the That Chapter podcast, which has a brand new shampoo episode podcast.
Yeah, please follow That Chapter. He's great. I've been following him since he started for years now. And if you can, like and subscribe, that'd be great to me. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.